Yeah, well, you know exactly what time it is when we're sitting on these couches. It's time for some more talking vs action.
Sibu, it's so good to be back here, and this time we're talking my language, that's CS2 goodness. And I think everybody is going to find today's topics quite interesting because we're going to dive deep and fully understand the map pool of CS2.
Exactly, and who better to tell us what's cooking besides our experts, Nixx and Slowye. Guys, so I think the real question here, Nixx, I'm going to start with you. How important is it for teams to have a deep map pool in CS2?
So I think it's incredibly important. So to dial it back a bit, at any one point in time, there's 7 maps in the competitive map pool. Okay. And no matter what format you're playing against your opponent, whether it's a best of 1, best of 3, or best of 5, you're not going to play one of those maps, and that's to your decision.
Sure.
You're always going to ban one map. So essentially, we're talking about 6 maps. In some cases 5, you want to be really solid on, so that it doesn't matter essentially what opponent you come up against. You have 6 maps, no matter what they pick, no matter what you pick, you're going to make the games competitive.
Okay.
And so maybe touch on a bit of the veto strategies that go into the process of running up to an event like this.
So generally the veteran teams that have all 7 maps prepared, if they are playing against a team that isn't as experienced as them, they might check their previous vetoes and they might actually ban the map that they are that they are picking the most. But other than that, pretty much you want to ban the team, or you want to ban the map that the team is practicing the most, and then pretty much pick your strongest map, unless it obviously kind of collides with their best map, then just play your best map.
So Sibu, this is where counter-strats come in, by the way. And this is where you're going to have to start getting a bit technical because...
I'm ready.
Yeah, you're going to have to start loosening up and getting ready to listen to these two, because counter-stratting would very much come in as a part of that veto strategy, where you would start thinking about, you just mentioned your opponent's best picks, worst picks. How would you guys go about this? Nixx, maybe give us some insight.
So I think it becomes really important, right? Because the map itself has its own stylistic element to it.
Sure.
Whether people want to agree with that or not, frankly, I couldn't care less. The way is that you have a map like Mirage, it's going to be more puggy. No matter which way you try to paint around the picture with that, it's going to be the case. So when it comes down to a veto process, or an anti-strat, people like to call it, in many ways people say preparation, it comes down to how do your opponents choose to play the map, you know? Do they choose to send certain players to certain areas? And that's also a big tell, you know? If I'm playing on the A site and I kill someone walking out a ramp, I can see that person's name in the kill feed. Is it going to be that A lurker normally? Sure. Is it going to be someone playing in that pack mentality idea? So in terms of preparation, that's where it comes in, you know. What does the opponent like to do on pistol rounds, on their first gun round? When they have no money, do they like to favor a palace pop or a V burst, or do they choose to, my favorite is double clock, run boost out mid, you know, just send the homeless people to try and do the magic, you know what I'm saying? So that's where the preparation comes in. And then as a team playing against them, you're sitting there thinking, okay guys, they're going to be on $2,000 a round, we should be expecting X, Y, and Z. And then you can set up your team accordingly to make sure that you can get that round victory at the end of the day.
So in your experience, which map picks do you find are more important and why?
I would say that the more technical maps that actually require you to be a lot more methodical, those are important, because like as Nixx said earlier, that you get the puggy maps, but then you also get the technical maps.
Sure.
Some maps you don't even need any UTOR and you can just run and gun
and
win the entire map. Whereas other ones you require...
You're not just saying you, Slowye, can run and gun. Exactly, yeah.
Only on Wednesdays.
There you go. Okay, fair. Yeah.
But with majority of the maps, like you do get more methodical maps like Inferno, not really Mirage, maybe Ancients. There are maps that you, as I said, you can run and gun and you can win just off that alone. But if you are playing against a team that is extremely technical and you try and do that on a technical map, you're going to get wiped.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most technical maps in the pool right now, I'd say, is Nuke. And if you have a completely new noob team who they're loading it for the first time against an experienced team, I'd say there's probably a 0% chance of them winning that map. Like the utility you need to know, the rotations you need to know, playing around sound cues, all those minute things eventually compound to the big picture. Whereas the converse of Dust 2, I think if you have one team that's loaded it for the first time versus one team that's played it 100 times, I still think there's maybe a percentage chance that that new team can still win that, because it's just let's go all 5 together. If we get a kill, we can try and win the round. Whereas on maps like Ancient, on Nuke, on Vertigo, you don't really have that same luxury. You sort of have to have the reps on that map to make things go forward and try and get those round victories.
So I don't hear a lot of talk about Dust. Sorry to interrupt you, but this is a map I have a little sweet spot for it. You know, we've been playing Dust for a very long time, and I think people were very happy to see Dust in the map. No?
I'm just saying, there's a reason I got taken out of the first place. That's all I'm saying.
What? Say it.
So give us some insight then on how you guys feel about Dust.
So initially when Dust was removed, I think they kind of felt that it was very stagnant. People were doing the exact same things over and over again. But then with
Past
the
20 years.
with the introduction of a lot of like the skyboxes being removed and you know, like a lot of the smokes now you can like do, you know, binded jump throws and stuff like that. So you can get new revolutionary, like it changes like kind of the meta of the map entirely, you know, from what it was to what it is now. But that's kind of what they do gradually over the time. I think at the moment Dust is a very tough map to play just because, as we said earlier, that it is a very puggy map. Like you can play it technically, but you can play it puggy as well. And as we said earlier, with playing in a best of one, it's not a map that you want to play in a best of one because, as Nick said, like any team, if you're playing them in a best of one, especially on a map like Dust 2, you have that risk of losing. So that's why, as an experienced team, you want to play a technical map in a best of one because you actually have that chance of, like, okay, they're not going to know any util on this map, so we can just shut them
For
down.
sure, like being on the experience side, I'd far rather play a Nuke Ancient or a Vertigo or an Inferno against a team rather than like a Mirage or a Dust. Like against 5 guys you've never seen their name before, stay away from those maps because that's when you're typing in chat, these guys are cheaters, these guys don't know what they're doing.
Coming up with all the
That's where you just stay as far away from those maps as possible.
Yeah.
And I think Dust is an interesting one because I think it can be so puggy, but at the same time it can be so technical, and that comes down to like how the team stylistically approach the map. I think if you have the 2 top teams in the country, like maybe you have a Kitsune against the Punishers playing against one another on Dust, you would see a much more technical approach than you would. But I think if you go further down the ladder, I think that technical element kind of gets thrown out the window. You see a little bit more B rushes, A rushes thrown in the mix, whereas the higher teams, they tend to default a lot better, play for picks a lot better. But the map itself, I think, lends itself a lot more to those puggy play styles, pack mentalities, death balling all together, and strength in numbers.
Slowye, let's assume I'm one of those teams going into a game against you.
Free win.
For me, right? Thank you. And I go in and maybe you veto one of the maps that I really thought I was going to cook you on. How do then me as a team adapt to the strategies that you've come up with? And does that do anything to the mental when you go into a game and you're like, that's the map I practice the most?
So for me, whenever I'm playing against a team that, let's say I have a map, let's say for Nick it's Inferno. Now I've played Inferno 100 times in the last 2 weeks and someone bans it. My mentality is going that, okay, I've never played this map that this team is picking against, might as well just go into it with I've got nothing to lose. If I was going into it with Inferno and I know that all my protocols are taken care of and I know that I should win this game, and if I lose it, I'm going to feel a lot more like down compared to if I'm playing a map that I've never played before and I lose it, it's, I haven't practiced.
Sure. Okay.
And that's why I think when we're talking about weak and strong map pools, I think in some cases having a weak map pool in a way can help the underdog, because when you're coming up against a super technical top tier team and they pick a technical map, the lower tier team, first of all, they've got nothing to lose when it comes into the tournament themselves, but also when it comes into the opponent's map pick, they have like less than 1% chance of winning, so they sort of just throw the cats and dogs out the window and they say, listen dog, we're just gonna work the magic and see what happens. And sometimes it works out, and for the big teams, that's kind of what catches them off guard, you know, like winning those pistol rounds that you wouldn't expect. You tend to call the other teams idiots for not knowing what they're doing, but it's just they're doing what intuitively feels good for them. So that's when the technical maps sort of bite the big teams in the backside. But to be fair, that does happen a lot less often than maybe I'm making it out to be. But there is just that element of confidence that could creep in for that smaller team that they could end up winning that map.
I mean, it's literally the saying of like, everybody has a plan until you shot in the face.
Exactly.
So, if you're the team that has no strats and you shoot them in the face.
Yeah, I think
What are you
Gandhi said
gonna
that.
do?
Yeah, Mahatma Gandhi said that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Totally. Don't fact check us, please.
So on that topic then, I'm hearing a lot of map names being thrown about, but maybe you guys can both give me your top 3 maps so that we can start counter-stratting against you guys for the next one.
Inferno and Inferno. Best map in the history of the game. I think if we're talking about maps that aren't in the current map pool, for me, it's Inferno, Train and Nuke. But Train's not in the map pool. So the third one, I'd have to say, has to go to Ancient.
I don't know, for me, I feel like one of the most, like, I would say underdog maps right now is probably Anubis. I mean, Anubis, for me, has been literally a more technical version of Mirage. You know, you can't just run and gun in that map, but it still feels like it still has that kind of same environment. So for me, it would be Ancient, Anubis, and Nuke. Just 3 technical
I feel
maps.
like that says a lot about you guys, by the way.
It
Like,
really
honestly,
does.
it really does. It screams try hard.
I'm so glad you said that.
Just don't
Tell
be
me
shot
about
in the face.
Vertigo. How you feel about Vertigo?
I think that map should be shot to the moon, to
Damn
be
it.
frank.
I love that you have such strong opinions.
He just says that because he wants train back.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
train. That's the creme de la creme of CS right there, you know?
I know we're being sidetracked here because we're talking about maps that aren't in the map pool. I just want to preface, aren't in the map pool. So if we are talking about maps that aren't in the map pool, we got Train,
Yeah.
Cache.
Yes. Cache is one of the best maps of all time as well.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I wasn't playing competitively when Cache was in the map pool still. I was still
That gives
a
away your
nerd
age.
playing on a
Yeah, I
40
was.
FPS laptop.
I played when it was introduced.
So the first time I saw Cache played at a really high level was when there was the first time they introduced the spawn smokes.
Yeah.
Where there was the one where you'd line up with the right side of the cloud and run a certain bit until your net graph passed the truck.
was
and
the
that was
Neo
like the
smoke,
first time
yeah.
where people were like, okay, these Europeans, they're a different breed, these guys. They're
They
not going
are.
outside,
Yeah.
they're just working the magic. But I think Cache and Train, if they get reintroduced into the map pool anytime soon, Vertigo has to be out, like as soon as. You know what I'm saying? Like Vertigo and Mirage for me, not because I hate Mirage or I dislike Mirage too much, I just think the
Overplayed?
map itself is just a bit stale.
Yeah.
I think it's been played so many times, it's been around for so
It's
long.
been in the scene for I think like maybe 9 years
Yeah.
now since they've removed
Too
it.
long.
Yeah.
And I think if they bring back a Cache or they bring back a Train, I think, especially the way the smokes are now, the way the map's played now, I think it really lends itself towards these maps. Like Train, the way the smokes are volumetric, so they can bloom downwards. You have a smoke that lands on the top of a train and it blooms down. I think stylistically, it would suit CS2 the best out of every map so far. And maybe that's why there's rumors of a CS2 rework for Train, and who knows what will happen next, I don't know.
Who knows? Slowly out of this map pool, what unexpected strategies do you think might come out of VS Masters?
Well, I mean, like as Nick said now, with all of the volumetric smokes and stuff, they can change the style that the map is played entirely. Like, think about Mirage, now you've got all the instant window smokes that bother me because now I can't go window with the AWP anymore.
Sit there, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, before teams were introducing that, I would literally just get like 30 kills on CT side every single time. But now it's like, you know, I've got to find the long ways around, and I've got to ask people to boost me, you know, not in matchmaking.
Yeah, I'm glad you put that out there.
But I mean, like, I don't think that there'll be too much coming out of the South African scene in terms of like brand new stuff. I think majority of it will be copied from like a European team or something that they see online or Reddit or something. But I think South African teams kind of have their own play style, and that's kind of where they stick to. They don't really branch out of that, either in fear of getting shouted at by their own team, like, what are you doing, you know? Or it will just be that, you know, I'm comfortable in my zone and this is the lane I'm staying in.
Talk me through what that is, like the South African strategies that you kind of find, usually how South African players tend to play.
I would say that they play very much by the rule book, you know, like the unwritten rule book, you know, like if you're in an advantage, don't peek because you don't want to give them the advantage back and stuff, but they don't realize that, you know, by risking something, you can actually give your team a bigger advantage. So I think it's more just a lot of the South African team kind of lacks initiative to take something upon themselves, like, okay, cool, you guys have done X, I need to do Y. A lot of teams will kind of play in their spot and that's their zone for the entire, you know, 24 rounds pretty much. So I think when teams start thinking out of the box and they're like, I don't actually always have to be in this position, I can start pushing, maybe I'll play aggressive a few rounds, manipulate them a little bit and then just never push it again. I guarantee you that guy's never going to be, the guy's not going to move, he's going to be waiting for you. So,
I think it's interesting when you were talking about a couple episodes ago, the experience and inexperience that the scene has. I think when you're looking at the top teams, your Kitsune, your Punishers, your Exceed, your Nixx, these guys, they are more experienced and they don't really play by that unwritten rule book that Aaron was referring to. You know, they have a 5v4 and they'd rather turn it into a 4v3 than stay in that 5v4 for 30 seconds, you know. They'd rather just throw the kitchen sink at it and see what happens. And the idea of, like, even though you're 5v4, doing things, even sometimes alone, can be like, imagine if you're walking out on a bomb site and you see one person. Now you know that there's maximum 3 people towards the other area of the map or something like that. So I think when you're looking at the top teams, they play that play style a lot better than what the lower teams do, where again, like, they're trying to tick all the boxes, the lower tier teams, where the top tier teams, they understand that it's fine to not dot your I's and cross your T's sometimes, you know what I'm saying? So when they end up cutting those corners, they're doing it from an educational perspective and an informed one, rather than just saying, guys, I'm just going to walk this area and hope for the best. These guys, they have an idea, they know what's going to happen, and if something goes well, they have a plan. If something doesn't go well, they also have a plan on top of that. And that's what I think what again builds that discrepancy between the top 3, top 4 and the rest, is just that initiative taking, that problem solving on the spot that makes them chasms ahead.
So on the topic of the local scene, how do you guys see the scene evolve, especially when it comes to the VS Masters series? Do we maybe also have the opportunity to get new players involved, and is there new strategies that could come from that? Maybe some words of encouragement as well?
I think it's really cool that we see some new RGLs coming up. That's always a big thing for me. I'm an RGL myself.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd always back the boys, you know what I'm saying? And it's super nice to see brand new in-game leaders coming up, because it's the idea of like, how do they view the game? You know, how do they want to set their teams up? Are they just copying and pasting how Europeans play? Because then again, when you're looking at a European standpoint, you're dealing with 50 teams at least that you can copy paste from. But out of those 50 teams, all of them will play differently. All of them will have different perspectives on how to play the 5v4s, the 4v3s, etc. So then it comes down from a new RGL, how do you choose to set yourself up in the dynamic of a team environment, you know? What do you prefer more? Like some teams, they prefer guns more than utility on certain rounds. Would you rather go for pistols and utility, or Galil and Kevlar? How do you then set yourselves up? And idealistically, I think that's where the new RGLs set themselves apart from the older RGLs, where that might be the leg up that they have. Is the older RGLs, it's a bit difficult to like take them off of their own ideologies away. It's a little bit difficult to teach an old dog new tricks, if you will. So that's the really interesting thing about the Masters this year, is there are new RGLs coming up. There are new ways of approaching the game, seeing the game, and that could influence people coming through, you know, whether they're going to move on to a different team afterwards, stay on that same team. I think it's really exciting seeing new players come up and new ideologies getting brought into the scene.
What I've noticed now with a lot of the, I would say, I don't want to call them less experienced teams, I would just say the up-and-coming teams, is they've started to implement that kind of like MP9 third round buy, where it's like, okay, you're going to be buying the next round, but you might as well buy something that if you get kills, it's going to give you money. So, I mean, why not? And the thing is, only European teams kind of run that kind of playstyle. So for 2C South African teams already running that, shows that people aren't just sitting at home, you know, playing other games, you know, they're actually watching and trying to stay ahead of the game.
I think one thing that we've seen is, I think back in the day, I think South African teams were more prone to innovation themselves than nowadays, where I think a lot of nowadays is a lot more copy-paste, which I think to some degree can stab you in the back to an idea, because when you're copying and pasting European teams, you might not know exactly why they're doing what they're doing. You don't have access to the communication or their coach and stuff like that. Whereas if you're innovating something yourself, you're sort of thinking about why you're doing it, when you're doing it, what is the scenario in which you should be doing it. Whereas European teams, when you're picking it up from a match that they've played, you sort of just copying and pasting and hoping for the best. And that's where sometimes I think newer, inexperienced players, they sort of do themselves a disservice, where they see that, oh, this is a great idea, but then they're not realizing in the topic of anti-stratting, they're not realizing the only reason why this team has done it is to anti-strat what the opponent has been doing.
Or it's to manipulate rotations.
Exactly, and you might not understand that as an inexperienced player. But again, it's a learning curve. You know, you might be doing that for a couple of years or a couple of months, and then after that you then start to realize, oh, okay, this is why they are doing that. So then we know going forward, they can then add to their playbook, and then eventually play more, South African teams playing more like European teams is essentially what we want, because that's the creme de la creme. So
Spoken like a true ideal.
Yeah, that's where we're going. Slowye, top of your head, which map do you feel like is going to be played the most at VS Masters?
I think it's probably going to be Ancient. It's a map that when we've been playing it, like, it's just the map that more frequent teams play, understand it. It does have that kind of aspect of run and gun, but obviously there are some basic smokes that everybody's going to need. And like from what I've seen, the scene isn't lacking in util knowledge or anything like that. So I think it's just going to come down to the experience on the map, the protocols that the teams have on the map, and then just, you know, are you prepared for what's going to be thrown at you?
Yes.
I know which map won't be played.
Here we go.
Vertigo is not going to be played at all. I'm telling you, so many teams are not going to play the map. I'd say Anubis is also up there. I think when you have the higher tier teams, like Aaron was saying earlier, higher tier teams pick up a map, everyone else starts to picking up as well. I can't think of a team off the top of my head out of the 8 that are at VS now that don't play the map. I'm pretty sure all of them play the map. If not all of them, maybe 7 or 6 of them play the map. So I think Anubis will also be up there. I don't think it'll be a map that's picked very frequently, but for a decider, I think it will definitely be thrown into the mix.
So then, with all this talk about maps, what do you guys think is going to be the map that influences the outcome of VS gaming the most?
That's a banger. That's a loaded question. I would say a map like, I'd say Nuke is up there. Just because I think when we're talking about the finals is best of 5. Nuke is a map you either play or you don't, to be honest. You're either good at it or you're not. So I think Nuke is a map you've slam dunked on an opponent if you're prepared. Whereas I think the other maps you can learn on your way, you can still get lucky around here or there, where I think Nuke might be influential from the perspective of if you're prepared and you're ready for it, you'll win that map cut and dry, whereas other maps I think is a bit different.
I think majority of teams, like if you do not have your nuke down, like your T's crossed and your I's dotted, like you can just get absolutely rolled on that map. Like Ancient, it's a map, as I said earlier, like if you just have the util, you can kind of wiggle your way around it. The same thing with Anubis, like it's a little bit more technical, but not as much as Nuke. Like Nuke, you have to have everything down. Otherwise you can just get absolutely whitewashed.
Let's say I'm setting up my team. I'm thinking of entering next time. Which map should I be starting with, making sure that my team is ready, no matter what anybody vetoes or chooses? Which map should I say, guys, first things first, this is what we're sitting on?
I think Nick is gonna probably be like, I told you so, but it's probably gonna be Inferno. Inferno is the map in the entire pool that teaches you how to be methodical. Like you need to know how, like this smoke there, that molly there, this is how we take this piece of control. This smoke there, this molly there, this is how we take this piece of control. It's the most methodical map, and the thing is, it requires a lot of teamwork from both halves of the map. Like you can't just play aggressive, there's not enough time for rotations or anything like that. So it needs to be like, okay, cool, we're gonna take this part first, then we're gonna take that part, maybe we'll settle for a little bit, wait for some sort of rotation, and then hit a sides,
So it's like one of those maps where if you're good at that map, it can help you with the other maps
And
that you play.
I think that's exactly what I was about to say, is I think a lot of newer teams coming up, they don't think that a play style on a certain map can be applicable to other maps, where I couldn't disagree more. I think Inferno teaches you, like what Aaron was saying, the push and pull effects of the game, and learning and understanding that idea of not letting, like people say it all the time, CS is a game of chess. Your opponent makes a move, you have to respond with one yourself. If you're letting that pawn push all the way up your board, then you're going to lose the game. So I think it's important when you look at a map like Inferno, once the opponent's made that move, like in a game of chess, you have to respond. And again, like that idea of that ideology of when that opponent makes their play, you have to respond, that can be applied on every map in the pool. So that's why I personally love Inferno so much. Look, I can't stop blazing this map till the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? It's got some of the best players in the history of the game. You try to build pyramids, but you've got no clay. That's a bagger, Shakespeare said that, that's how good it was. And it's just like, for me, in terms of it being iconic, it's there. In terms of teaching you guys the game, it's there. In terms of being a third map decider,
it's been literally known as like the third map decider.
Everything. It's guys, listen. It's so good.
You heard it here first. Inferno, if you're going to start, Inferno. But one thing I love about CS is just how complex the game is, even though at face value it seems so simple.
Well, Super, you can see exactly why I love it, and just have that competitive edge against your opponents is better than beating wasabi on the racing route. Anytime.
Before the ghost of wasabi appears, let's call it right here. Let us know what you guys think about today's decision on our socials. It's at VS Gaming World. Till next time, keep gaming. I'll get on Inferno as soon as I get it.
You're gonna show him a banana rush.
Telkom. Possible begins here.